Welcome back everyone. Let's go ahead and take a look at none other than the M1 MacBook Pro, the 13-inch model, and see how it holds up in 2022. Now, like I've said before, I love this MacBook, and what's very interesting is you could say I have some insight to this MacBook because I've been using it. It's my main Mac that I use for probably since early 2021. I think in like February or March, I purchased this thing, probably even like January I bought this thing, and I'm gonna be honest, I've had a great experience with it overall. Recently, it's been giving me a few issues here and there, which I'll talk about in this video, but since 2021, I've been using it, and for the first, I would say, year of me using it, absolutely no hiccups. I mean, I was coming from a 2015 iMac and a 2015 15-inch MacBook Pro, and personally, I love those things. You know, my use case and the amount of things I do with my MacBook, to be honest, I edit a lot of videos, and that's pretty much it. Other than that, I'm not using this thing to do any crazy 3D rendering. I'm not, even video editing like 8K footage. I'm just doing like 1080p videos, and even that, could sometimes take a load, but it's really not that big. But it's really not been that big of a deal. And this MacBook, for pretty much everything I've done with it, has been solid. I'll get into all the details, here in a little bit. But for the whole entire purpose of this video, I love this MacBook, and I probably still recommend buying it for sure. If you want to pick it up, links will be down in the description. You pick it up from there, you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of this MacBook, it is a very, very beautiful machine. Although the newer ones have notches and ProMotion displays and all this other stuff, I still love the design of this MacBook, and the way I have it set up is I have it connected to my LG Ultrafine 5K display. So it is connected to a display. I have it docked for a majority of the time, but I still use it undocked for about 4 hours, 5 hours a day sometimes. So again, I have a little bit of a mix on both worlds, but either or, when I have it connected to a MacBook and, to my LG, but when I have it connected to my display, I don't feel like I'm using like a MacBook. I feel like I'm actually using a desktop PC, which is so beautiful. I don't feel like I'm getting a watered down experience. I still own a 2015 iMac that I use sometimes, but I can definitely tell how fast the M1 MacBook Pro is. Now we have the Apple logo up top. We have the 13-inch screen on it, which still looks great. It's a Retina panel. I think everyone kind of knows about it by now. You have the newer standardized keyboard, which has a lot more travel. Compared this one to like the 14-inch ones, I don't really think it's a crazy big deal, although you do have like a little bit of a different coloring on the back of the 14 and 16-inch ones. But I still love the 13-inch one for sure. I think it feels great. And you have a massive trackpad. Now, one of my biggest gripes with the 13-inch MacBook Pro isn't even the touch bar. I love the touch bar. Actually, I don't love it, but I'm okay with it. It does glitch up quite a bit, and I just don't like sliding my finger across. It just feels like I'm like messing things up if I'm like increasing volume. I just don't like it, but I don't mind it. I think buttons or either or, like I don't have that big of a preference. Like I said, for probably like 8 hours of the day, if I'm not, using it separately, I usually have it docked up to a display, so I'm using a keyboard anyway. However, one of my biggest gripes with the 13-inch MacBook is the port selection. There is no 4-port selection on the M1 MacBook Pro 13-inch model. With the 14 and 16-inch ones, we do have it. This one we don't, and this can be kind of an inconvenience. If you're trying to connect multiple different things to your MacBook, typically, yes, you can get dongles and you can do other things, but there are some dongles and some devices out there. For example, I can't really charge my MacBook while I have a certain dongle connected to my specific MacBook either. And it's like my microphone dongle, so I can't really connect it to multiple different things at one time, which is kind of an annoyance. And that's why I would love to have, if I was going to be given 2 ports, I wish I had 1 port on each side. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but that's been probably the only issue I've had in terms of hardware. For the last, year or whatever, I haven't had, random shutdowns. Well, I've had random shutdowns, but I haven't had anything that I just couldn't fix with a reboot. So that's a big thing to keep in mind. No failing displays, no failing keyboards, no failing ports, no failing anything, no trackpad issues. It's all been solid. And it's still, the design of this MacBook has been kind of transferred over since the 2016 one, but it still feels like a very good machine. And anytime I pick it up and I, put it in my book bag and I take it out, I always feel like I have a premium, machine with me. I've owned lots of different devices, and I've owned lots of laptops and PCs and, MacBooks, and this one still feels extremely premium. Granted, I can still hold my 2012 MacBook and still feel like it's very premium, but this one still feels very premium, which is so beautiful. Now, internally, that M1 chip, this is a really good chipset for everything that I need to do. Personally, I don't consider myself a power user, and I also see a lot of people kind of recommending way more powerful machines than they need to. To be honest, you could probably probably give me like my 2015 MacBook Pro that I still use sometimes. I could use that every single day and not have a, big deal with it. I think it's perfectly fine. I use my 2015 iMac all the time too. I don't really feel the need to upgrade my stuff all the time, and that's why I felt really comfortable buying something like the M1 MacBook Pro, because yeah, it's kind of expensive, and can you afford it? Yes, but I don't really feel like spending a bunch of money all the time on like random stuff like this, even though I buy iPhones and stuff. My personal use case, I don't feel like I do a lot, and I don't really game on my PC or anything like that. But give me a 2015 MacBook Pro, I'm still perfectly fine. But the issue with some of these older Macs, and even like an older iMac to be honest, is the fan noise. This is one of the most annoying things of owning probably any of the Intel MacBooks. I returned my 16-inch MacBook Pro back in 2020, I think, after I bought it. The fan noises I just could not deal with. So I returned all those Macs. My 2015 MacBook Pro was like a plane going off every single time I even opened up Chrome, to be honest. But I was okay with it at that time. Now, because I'm editing and I'm recording so much audio, I can't have the fan noises in the background. So I had to go and upgrade. So if you're somebody in that space, if you're somebody who, is recording a lot of audio, or you're sensitive to those fan noises and everything, well, this is probably one of the machines for you. It is dead silent. The MacBook Air might be a little bit better because it doesn't even have a fan within it, but that is one of the most important things I found with owning one of these MacBooks. I have it docked to my 5K display. It's never overheated at all from anything I've done with it. The only times I've even stretched it and heard the fans on is when I'm editing and exporting like 4 or 5 videos at a time. Other than that, this thing is solid, and the performance of this thing has been great. Now, I can go in detail about the benchmarks and everything, but like I mentioned, I've been using this MacBook for the last good part of like almost a year and a half, and I haven't had too many issues. Now, this hasn't been perfect. I've had a few issues recently. After installing, I think, the latest version of macOS, I've been having a few issues kind of come up here and there. It hasn't been a deal breaker, but they have been mostly software issues for the most part, so no hardware issues. Sometimes if I go ahead and remove my MacBook from the display, the LG display I have, sometimes it'll reboot. It's very annoying. It'll randomly happen, and I don't know why it happens all the time. And I don't know why it happens, but it just happens sometimes. It happened yesterday, actually. Another thing is sometimes things can glitch up. It can kind of be a little weird here and there, but again, if it's really bad, it can be fixed with a reboot, but I haven't had to do that in a long time either. But one of the other most annoying things is that this MacBook Pro only supports one display. So if you're somebody who wants to connect multiple displays to your MacBook, well, you're not really going to be able to do that. However, I've been able to somewhat circumvent this with the feature, which is the universal, desktop display, whatever that Apple just made, which allows us to go ahead and kind of use our other Apple devices as we can go ahead and use like the same Magic Keyboard or Magic Trackpad, whatever you have, to communicate from one MacBook to the other. So in this case, I have my MacBook set up as a, desktop with my, 5K display, and I have my 5K iMac right next to it. That's a 2015 one. And I can go ahead and pretty much use both as separate machines. And there's a separate CPU within it. There's a whole other machine right here. And I don't have to switch from one mouse to the other. I can use the same mouses, and with universal mode on, I can swipe from one, MacBook to the other. And it's almost like having 2 displays right next to each other, which is so nice. So ultimately, what I can definitely tell you, the M1 MacBook Pro, I think is still completely worth it. It's a very solid machine. It's definitely not perfect, but for the last year and a half, I think it's been a very solid machine. I do plan on going up to the 14-inch MacBook Pro probably sooner than later, just because the SD card slot and extra ports. But if you don't really care about that stuff, I would recommend going to the M1 MacBook Pro. I think it's a solid machine, and I don't really think you can go wrong with it in my opinion. So that kind of covers it up. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.